Hello and welcome to Pale Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network where we reflect on Wildbow's most revived work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I have to warn you, and this is important, before we say anything.
Not this again.
Yes. I'm just Elliot Diebold today, not Ellie Derp Diebold.
Derpbold, yeah, huzzah for that.
Huzzah.
But yeah, so we're coming at you live in the Discord. Welcome everyone who's in the Discord. Congratulations for being here live. It's going to be a fun time. Should we get into it, Elliot?
Yeah, let's do it.
We're talking about Go for the Throat 23.9 today, from Verona's perspective. And yeah, Verona's having a fun time drawing a big circle, frustrated that she doesn't really know what she's doing.
Yeah, or it's like she has a plan, but the plan sucks, and it's probably not going to work. But It's like they don't have anything better, so she's just doing it anyway.
Yeah, which is good. I think it's great that even Verona is aware that she's the worst of the three Kennetiers and is letting the team down. So, you know, she's at least self-aware, which is good.
Yeah, I think that's what she needs to hear right now.
Yeah.
Although I do think, and is anybody keeping track of the sword moot stuff and how many gainsays people are working up, breaking those? Because I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to say. I don't think you're allowed to say she's the worst anymore. I think that's one of the stupid sword moot rules.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. But whatever.
Yeah, well, I hope somebody's keeping track of that because we certainly aren't, for our own self-interest.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Anyway, yeah,
sorry.
Verona's the worst.
just in for a penny. I really enjoyed how much this chapter got me in the head, like the headspace of how Verona is just really like on the brink of falling apart. Like, because I feel like we have been building up to this for well over an arc now. Like in universe, I think it's only been like 2 days since we had that chapter where she like fell in the icy water and barely made it out of Kennet below alive. And you know, in the last day, a bunch of other shit has happened, and like one of the first things that's mentioned in this chapter is that she grew restless in her domain and had to leave. And I was like, I saw that as a sign she's really not in a good space, because it's like, well, the domain is literally kind of her safe space. It's like a place of calm and peace where she feels like literally at home, and she just was too antsy to even stay there, so she had to leave. Like, she's just, I think right from the get-go, this chapter sort of puts you in the headspace of like Verona is frazzled and stressed and not coping.
Yeah. She's not having a good time, is she? And she articulates it later to Avery as like how she's always losing things, which was interesting to me because like that's happening to everybody. I don't know. It was interesting that that's what she kind of landed on as her thing. I don't know. Makes me think she's just obviously not having a good time in general and trying to find a way to articulate it. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an element, like something that happens when Avery shows up in a bit is Verona is like, oh, and everything's on me, and like I'm worried I can't do this, and Avery keeps sort of having to respond with like, no, everything's on us. We have to do like this is something. I think when Verona is in a bad space like this, and at the end of her rope, she has that tendency to sort of put all the pressure on herself and forget. Like that this isn't, or that this is happening to everyone. Like, I don't know, just sort of an inward focus, and I kind of get that. Like, maybe I'm projecting a bit here, but my big takeaway from Verona's was it was less about like the losing stuff, because you're right, like that is sort of happening to everyone, and just it's like it feels to her like it keeps happening as soon as she builds something good. Like, because I guess to compare her to say Lucy, like Lucy is somebody who, like, obviously Lucy has suffered like hardships and stuff, and like society wasn't treating her well, but like the thing with Lucy is kind of like she's fine with living a normal Kennet above life just without the racism. If you take the racism out, then she'd actually be fine. She's fighting against that one specific thing, whereas like the thing with Verona is like she's just kind of fundamentally incompatible with Kennet above, so she keeps trying to build like sort of complete alternatives to stuff, and that's like as soon as she gets comfortable and in a routine and like, oh, she's got her hooligans, she's finally got like good friends that she's in sync with, and she's got Anselm and Mal, and now they're all potentially dying. Like it's yeah, it's just like that inability. And yeah, I don't know. Like to a degree, yeah, that does happen to everyone, but it seems to frazzle Verona a lot more for whatever reason, and I
I
get that.
think just because she doesn't have a stable place to go back to, right? Like
Yeah, good point.
where Avery and Lucy have families as a, you know, we've always got your back, we're your family kind of thing. Verona
Mm,
has that. The closest thing Verona has to that is the other Kennetiers, or up until now, the hooligans, right? So like, yeah, I think
yeah.
it's just that she doesn't have a home as much.
Yeah, and that's really what she's been missing through the whole
Yes.
story in a way.
Yeah.
And like obviously that ties in a lot to how this chapter's about to end.
Mm.
With Sylvia. But yeah, like I mean, I guess the other thing, because yeah, like Verona opens the chapter by sort of reminding us Kennet found is empty, Kennet below is dying. So the only
Mm.
Kennet that's really a thing right now is Kennet above, and she's always fucking hated that shit.
Yeah.
Like that's never been her jam, and so it's like like this is the thing. She helped build Kennet below. She founded Kennet found. Like she keeps building these alternatives to a society that didn't fit her, and then it doesn't. It's never stable, and that would be very frustrating.
Mm.
And again, to tie into Sylvia, that reminds me a lot of what Sylvia was saying when she was kind of refusing to move to Kennet a couple of chapters ago,
Mm.
where Sylvia's like, it took me ages to find this stability, like after I left your dad, and that I've got in Thunder Bay, and I just really don't want to rock that boat. And this is Verona, I guess, kind of lamenting the fact that she's never even really had that, like what Sylvia had. Like she keeps kind of getting close, and then it disappears really quickly.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty rough for poor old Verona. Fucking.
The time's the charm.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's worth calling out. Like Juliet also gets a lot of really interesting focus as
Mm.
we like. I feel like this chapter is kind of primarily dealing with this aspect of like it's Verona being challenged with all the stuff she's been getting hit with all story as has been happening to all three Kennetiers at the moment. But like
Mm.
Verona and Juliet are really kind of fluctuating wildly between being in sync and out of sync, which I think is a great sort of metaphor for Verona's headspace right now. Like she's alternating between doing really cool stuff and then just like having a mild panic attack.
Mm.
It's also funny because I think she gets a bit of a taste of what she's like to work with. Like Gillette starts cracking jokes and Verona's like, not right now, it's too serious. And I was like, well, how the turntables turn.
Mm.
But yeah, like I just thought it was really fun. Sort of Verona thinks quite a few times about Gillette as a familiar candidate again and what she's trying to get out of that. And
Yes.
I'd still be lying if I said I fully kind of understand it exactly, but like I found it really fun how like as Verona is all over the place, it kind of affects her relationship with Gillette in the same way, because that is what would sort of happen if you're setting up a duplicate-ish of yourself to be your familiar. Like when you're off kilter, so is that whole relationship.
Mm. Yeah. 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 It's interesting seeing Verona and Juliet working together since Verona's been back in town, and what it might be like if Juliet becomes Verona's familiar. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think of them as a pair? Do you think they would be a good, familiar practitioner combo?
I think I do, but I also think I don't. Yeah, I she talks later on about like the executive dysfunction and stuff, and that I don't think I fully get it. I need somebody who's smart to explain a bit more, and I feel like the story already did, so maybe I'm just dumb. But like,
Mm.
I feel like they kind of work, but there's some like layering there about how Verona views herself and how Gillette reflects her that I don't isn't quite clicking for me.
Mm.
I mean, they demonstrably work great together. Like when Gillette enters serious mode here, she kind of makes a suggestion that Verona's like, "Well, yeah, that's a good point." Like, so it seems like it'd be a good idea. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have to see.
yeah,
It seems
um,
like, yeah, as Zachary is saying, I think they would amplify each other's strengths and weaknesses.
but I guess the fun part of the Gillette Verona thing, which is the part I don't quite sort of understand how it fits into her plan, is like Gillette isn't exactly Verona. So like there are aspects of Gillette which help Verona get an outside perspective while still being a very Verona-y perspective.
Mm.
And like that's the fascinating part to me is Gillette isn't just Verona too. She is kind of her own person. And so what does that mean for the idea of taking a duplicate of yourself as your familiar?
Mm. Yeah, good
Anyway,
question.
um, I also wanted to go. There's this great bit as Verona is kind of reminding us, doing a bit of a recap as to what's happening right now. She mentions like Kennet below is being leached for power, and the result is that what would remain of Kennet is going to collapse if you take it out. And she says it's like building an extensive basement and then knocking out key walls, which like maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill here, but I can't hear the word basement in a Verona chapter without thinking about her dad's lovely basement that we've spent so much of this story talking about. And it just felt like the echoes of her dad's house sort of reaching into the way she thinks in her metaphor right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's well, yeah, she hasn't been thinking about her dad or her old house that much in this chapter, right? So it's good they at least get a shout out.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I just the idea that like her metaphor of if you build a big basement and then everything above it collapses, that's gonna like fuck up the basement. That is almost assuredly what happened. Like they couldn't get down to the basement in her house when they went there the last time because the door was too delicate.
Yeah.
Do you think? And does that make Kennet found the second story? Do you think? Or am I just mining this metaphor for far too
maybe
much?
you're taking it too deep. But yeah, so Avery rocks up and tries to reassure Verona, kind of unsuccessfully, but then they get attacked by a cool gamer.
Yeah, once again, gamers proving that they're the true villains of this story.
Yeah.
This guy and Declan, what a terrifying team up that would be.
It would be good. I would love to see Declan become a magical gamer. I think it would be hilarious.
I'd love to see like in a future story that's a couple of years in the future what Declan has turned into. But yeah, I mean, obviously Avery is a bit of an MVP in this section. Like she's just such a good bean. She comes in here, she basically acts as Verona's therapist, gets her to open up, and like Verona again, it sort of sits here and thinks to herself, "Man, I could not talk to Gillette about this stuff, and I probably should think about what's going on there," which is sort of directly foreshadowing the end of the chapter, I think. But yeah, it's just like Avery doing what she does best, which is kind of coming in, checking up on someone and like helping them through a rough patch.
Yeah, that's classic Avery stuff. But let's talk about this gamer guy because I found him very interesting. So, just to kind of make sure I understand and we're on the same page, he found a magic video game item, a console, I guess, which he then like hid inside of himself as an Alcazar, and then it kind of took over him, right? So then, like the the magic item, which is kind of personified as just a big guy, is what Verona refers to it as, is just like really good at grabbing stuff. So I guess that was kind of the magic item's power originally. Yeah. So I'm kind of picturing maybe like a power glove or something that's just like really good at grabbing things, which is just already conceptually funny for a magic video game. It helps you collect potions and shit, I guess.
Yeah. Well, because there was the like there was Clem's one that gets mentioned in the conversation with this guy that was like a life sim or dating sim or something. And like that one had power, so it's like, yeah, like if it's some sort of game where you've got to collect shit or whatever, then like, yeah, this thing's magic power. When it was just a console, is probably about fetching items using magic powers, and then that's sort of been manifested as, yeah, this big boy with stretchy arms that they fight in this chapter. That's definitely my understanding. It's one of those classic Otherverse things where it's just like this could be a whole story if you wanted it to. Not like maybe not a 3.5 million word one or whatever, but like a normal book could easily be written about this kid who accidentally. Because how do you Alcazar something into yourself? That's what I don't understand. Like, because
you make an Alcazar of yourself and then you put something in there, I guess.
But how do you put something in there when you're the Alcazar? You know what I mean? Like,
don't worry about it.
You're busy.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure there's a way.
Anyway, yeah, I thought that was it's just like, again, it's just a really fun sort of mini villain who just could be his whole own thing. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Good stuff. But yeah, they're a fun character. They're very like they're so mercenary in their actions in this chapter, right? Like they're just like, I'm just here kind of doing a job. Oh, you can maybe help me? All right, I'll give you a 60-second timeout. Oh no, I probably
Yeah.
can't help. All right, get them, boys. Kind of vibe. It's
Well,
just
yeah,
funny.
his whole vibe is that now that he lives with this thing that just kind of gets him everything he wants as immediately as it can, it's kind of taken the joy out of life. Like one of the things Verona keeps talking about is how fucking tired and just bored this kid seems. Like, and he specifically brings up the kind of thing where it's like, yeah, it's Christmas every day. That's great, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of get like it seems like his whole vibe is just like there's no joy in his life anymore because this thing's constantly hassling him to make him get stuff, and it just like there's no concept of want in his life anymore, and that's like a depressing kind of emptiness.
Mm.
And obviously a hilarious counter to what Verona was just whinging about early in the chapter.
Yeah. But yeah, so I do think there's this funny moment where, as this is happening, Verona's like, "Oh, thank God, our lives are in danger. Now I can focus a bit better," which is just a very classic Verona thing.
Yeah, but like, yeah, I kind of get it because it's like now this is just one thing, and she doesn't have to worry about all the other stuff. It's like, okay, this guy is the problem. He's threatening all the other stuff. Now I can just focus on solving this one problem, and it's not me trying to fix all of Kennet below and save thousands of lives with no resources.
Mm.
Because that was like something I wanted to bring up that I thought was really fun about this chapter is we used to talk about, I think it was like Arc 9 when they brought up the idea of like the town's perimeter could depower practitioners, and we're like, it would be a really fun way to challenge the Kenneteers to work without their powers after building them up all story. And wait, I only just noticed in this chapter that's kind of what this final arc has done by sending all the Kennet others away. It's like they no longer have access to Kennet's battery of power. Like the Kenneteers are kind of operating without their standard allies and battery power and stuff, and that's like got this really fun. It's back to feeling like it's just the three of them scrapping together whatever they can against the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, going back to the gamer guy, this one's quite as well. I love the idea that because Avery's here as we're fighting him, and it's like we've talked a lot recently about the whole Avery Verona overlap and how that's kind of very losty Kennet found vibes. It's all like fun and games, as well as being alone, and like so this gamer guy feels like the perfect villain for the two of them to sort of fight as a bit villain, because he's like in many ways his game experience is like the opposite of everything lost. So I just thought that was like a really fun little choice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff.
And I also love, sorry, I should have brought this up when you mentioned like Verona loving that this is sort of a distraction. There's the great moment where he mentions that as the game console took over his self, now his heart is just a big battery. Verona's like, how big a battery? And
Yeah.
Avery sort of takes a sec to figure out what she's talking about. She's like, come on, Ronnie, like, you can't. It's just like, I love that sort of, it's that classic Verona brainstorming where she just sort of connected some dots, and it's like, I'll worry about the ethics in a sec. I'm just exploring the plausibility.
It's yeah, it's every obstacle is just an opportunity in Verona's mind.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, so they end up ditching the gamer by hitting him with his worst nightmare, normies.
Horrifying.
Which works pretty well. Yeah. I do like these innocents are kind of like they're here early on in the chapter as kind of seeding the idea of using the innocents more actively in a conflict, right?
Yeah.
I do really like every time we have a thing like this where innocence as a concept is played with as a defense, which has happened a few times in the chapter, and I think it's just always really funny.
Yeah,
but
also a few times in like the whole story.
In the whole story, yeah, that's what I
mean.
mean. But it seems like that's probably not going to happen much more in Kennet, given the way things are going.
Yeah, a bit of a last hurrah for using innocence as a shield. I do think it is, like funny that they sort of use it at the last minute right here, because it also kind of made me think about, like, as they're about to get rid of it, I was like, it is a tool as well. Like, you know, I don't get me wrong, I'm fully on board. I feel like I've been pro innocence is bad, or I've been on team innocence is bad for a while now. But like, so I'm all in on this plan, but this is like a little reminder of some of the benefits of what innocence provides, not just to the innocent, but to even some practitioners and others. Like, as problematic as it is, they are giving up a tool by doing this. And, you know, Liz makes Verona really confront the risk that the trio are taking by by awarening all these people at the end of the chapter. And so I thought this was like a good little moment to help remind us that it's like, yeah, they're taking away innocence, while like big picture, I feel like it's a good thing. It's a hell of a risky move right now.
Yeah, yeah, it is a wild move, isn't it? Because it really is exposing everyone to a lot of danger when Charles is just throwing
Yeah,
others at them, right?
like Liz makes a good point. This is like the worst time to do this in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, the defector negatives are around, and they definitely aren't intentionally helping the team.
Nomi wins the award for being this, like, the bit where she's like, I am placing my bag here. Do not touch my bag with all my valuable possessions in it that you should not see. And then she just sort of leaves, and it was just like, oh yeah, so fucking funny.
It is very good. It reminded me of Jurassic World Dominion, where the guy's like, don't take that elevator down to the secret floor. Good stuff. Yeah, it is nice that they're around and helping. Like, you know, they got their head a bit out of their asses and are willing to be, I don't know, helpful.
Yeah. I kind of got the vibe last time we saw them, I think it was 2 chapters ago or whatever, like, they were there, they just
needed the right opportunity to be able to help, I guess.
Yeah, and they need the plausible deniability. Like, they can't get on side while the Kenneteers are in the room, because the whole thing is they have to actively not be helping the Kenneteers. So it's like they have to leave and then be like, well, we've found an excuse as to why it's not technically helping, and we did it without the Kenneteers, which means it's legit. But yeah, it's that kind of like malicious compliance, which just is always fun to read.
Yeah.
Like, and Harry using her big fucking horror powers to slap an innocent on the back of the head was just so funny.
Yeah.
Like, after watching Helen use it for all this definitionally horrific stuff, like Harry's just using it
pranks.
Yeah. I just thought that was great.
Yeah. But yeah, so mulling over on innocence, Verona decides to kick their plan into high gear. They're gonna awareanize Kennet, and Louise has to make the call on whether they should do it or not.
And I just have to call out this first moment when Verona texts Avery. She's like, I think we should do this. And then we get this text which it's like, every second Avery wasn't replying had Verona tensed. She was using the tension to motivate herself to put lines down to figure out the diagram. What was Avery typing? An argument against it? A doubt? A new complication? And then we just get Avery just replies K. That just captured like the tenseness that Verona is feeling right now so well, that it's like she's had a mini meltdown in the time it's taken Avery to just write K.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
This is how, so that is how it feels in real life. Like, what a great little capture of just the anxiety of non-instantaneous messaging.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is very fun. I just am like, there's so many implications for what will happen once they aware a bunch of people here, right? Like, it's such a big move that it's hard to fully contain all the ideas of what it would do. What do you think it's going to do to Liz? What will happen to Liz if a lot of people in Kennet become aware? Like, will she? Because I was thinking about back when Ken was around, there was a conversation about like, what if we make magic more of a foundational part of Kennet?
Yeah.
What will that do to you, kind of stuff? And I'm like, yeah, thinking about that with the idea of Liz, and just very interested to see how it goes, I guess.
Maybe if there isn't a fundamental underpinning of the town being that a bunch of them are lying to the other bunch and it's all separated, maybe she'll stop being such a pain in the ass to deal with, because she won't be constantly trying to keep secrets and backstab people and create that shitty environment. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I agree. I think it's fascinating because I guess she's the spirit of Kennet, right? So it depends what happens to Kennet. That should reflect what happens to her. So that's really the question, is what happens to Kennet. And like, I don't, yeah, like, because I feel like the thing we learned early in the story was that you can't just like undo the seal in a small area like this because then it gets knotted up, and that was something the story talked about a lot. I think around arc 10 or 9 or so. But then I like Kennet is kind of protected by that because it's already sort of knotted with Kennet below, and then they've got Kennet found. It's sort of created that 3-tier system to prevent it from getting as cut off from the wider world as it should be.
Mm.
And so, like, is that going to be the secret source for what Kennet looks like moving forward if it does fundamentally disrupt the seal?
Mm.
Yeah. And then, like, because Charles's base is still here, and I'm like, if you're an institution of the seal and your home base is in a place where the seal isn't really much of a thing anymore, that's got to hurt, right? Like, he's going to have to move.
Yeah. It's too hard to pin it down to know fully what the impact is going to be, though, right? Like,
yeah, well, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot that could happen, and some of it's going to depend on exactly how the chips fall, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I also think it's worth talking about, like, metaphorically. I think one of the biggest aspects of innocence, as I see it, is kind of mapping to, I guess, ignorance would be the word I want, but like, it feels like, particularly if you go back in time to like the 90s and stuff, there were just a lot of middle class white people, to focusing on one demographic, who were just kind of able to live their life and not really think about or struggle with what was happening to other people in the world. Like, that was like, I see innocence as kind of being this one group who just like are able to live in ignorance and not worry about what's happening to the rest of the world, just engage with the part that they're in. And so, like, the Kennetys are essentially just like spreading their woke message, and forcing people to confront that there are like other demographics that need their help. What's interesting to me about that is I feel like this group of people who they've really got here, I think, are for the most part going to be really good about that. But obviously, like, the word woke right now, there's like a group that tries to co-opt that and turn it into like a thing. Like, I can't help but think that maybe this is more of a sequel thing, but like, if something like Kennet starts to get ground as much as there'll be like people spreading wokeness or awakeness or whatever we're going to call it this story, it's like,
well, it's awareness, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, like, it's I feel like there's going to be a group of people who are like anti the, like, yeah, I don't know, weird, like Sharons, I guess. Obviously, there'll be people who are like anti awareness spreading in a like, that'll be a really fun sort of conflict to drive a future story, maybe.
Yeah, we'll have to see, I guess.
Yeah,
that can be for a future convo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. Like, yeah, I feel like it's, in the same way that the seal on its face was a great idea that led to a lot of problems, right? Obviously. That's what this feels like to me, of like, it's such a fundamentally different way of thinking that it's impossible to predict all the kind of, ramifications that are 3 or 4 steps down the chain.
Well, it's like, because I think all 3 of the Kennetys earlier on in the arc, when they were putting this plan together, they were thinking about, like, they wanted to do like what Charles was doing, but not shit, basically. And this feels kind of like that, right? Like, this is a big move. It's good. Like, I think Avery says to Louise in a bit, like, it's going to require a lot of work, a lot of vigilance. Like, it's not just like a flick a switch and it's going to be done and easy. This is going to be hard, but it reminds me of some of the ways Charles was trying to just like flip the table. They're just putting a lot more thought into what it looks like and whether it's actually helping people right now.
Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, it's interesting to note we're also in Louise's perspective for this little section, right? Like, and obviously, I think Wabo decided to do that primarily for the reason of letting us see her internally cringe when she reveals her relationship with Matthew. But I wonder if there were any other reasons that this decision was made.
Yeah, I think it's really fun to be in the head of an aware as this decision is being made, particularly the like OG aware / point of view of the entire story. Like, it really emphasizes again that difference between how the Kennetys and how Charles did things. Is like, the Kennetys have gone to an aware and they're like, hey, this isn't ideal because we're kind of ripping a band-aid off, but like, do you think this is a good idea? Like they're consulting an expert, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, like I think it was important to like it's important to show how much they're factoring in an awares POV as they're doing this.
Hmm.
I also thought it was super interesting that Louise had the cracked Lucy banner in hers,
Yeah,
in her section, because it's been popping up a lot recently. Like because Bubble Yum had it too, and it was a bit like I'd kind of thought it was a bit of a Charles thing, the cracked Lucy banner, but then like I don't see why Bubble Yum and Louise have it then. So I'm wondering if like the cracked Lucy banner now, because there's a picture of the seal in Lucy's banner, and so I feel like maybe this is the banner that just sort of signifies like attacks on the seal, basically, and that's why Charles had it for a while, kind of exclusively, because he was really working on that. But as we're seeing, like Bubble Yum and Toad Soil were kind of actually trying to attack a lot of foundational stuff about fairies and goblins. And
yeah.
now we're seeing it with Louise. Like I think the cracks are symbolic of basically cracks in the foundation of the seal, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. I like that read. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess we'll see.
yeah. Um. So yeah, Louise gives the thumbs up, and all the non-shitty Kennet citizens start to show up.
Yeah. Well, sorry,
Verona.
hold on. Hold on. Before you finish that thought, I mean George is here,
Yeah.
so some of the shitty citizens have shown up.
It's fine.
And I mean, Carolyn Gray's here, so the worst of the worst have really come out.
I'm really excited for Carolyn. I think there's going to be some. I think there's going to be some aware that are going to become important. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
I think like the cat lady maybe will be one, like who will play some kind of key role. And I really hope that Carolyn is one of these aware that become important enough to do something major. I just think it would be so funny.
Yeah, I just hope it's also Carolyn, because I think it's really fun watching Verona struggle to not just be really mad at Carolyn, because it's like Verona knows that it makes zero sense, but it's like this instinctive. She just is really mad at Carolyn because she kind of sees it as Carolyn's fault that Jeremy didn't want to do their stuff anymore, where it's clearly not, and she knows that, but she can't help but be mad at her, and it's just funny.
Yeah. Yeah. It is fun. But yeah, so Verona announces magic, and Sylvia almost starts to realize what's going on. We don't quite see her get there this chapter, but we're going to see it presumably soon, and that's very exciting.
Yeah. Like especially because as we talked about earlier, like this was a chapter that was really kind of deep diving and focusing in on like a big part of Verona's arc here is really going to be like finally figuring out what reaching out, having support networks, and coping with stress and loss means to her. And yeah, like we saw her kind of get on with Avery, not so much with Gillette, sorry. And she was thinking about how Gillette doesn't work as a therapist for her because of the familial connection. And then here she's like, sorry, mom, but I'm going to be selfish. You have to be a mom for me right now, whether you fucking want to or not. Like, this is happening. And I think that that's going to be so fun for rounding out Verona's arc, while also being a really fun, specific case for us to examine as we're experimenting with, can we do awareness good? Because Sylvia's not like Kelsey, Connor, and Jasmine. Like they were already in, so to speak, right? Like they were the good parents who were already there. It's like Sylvia is much more an aware who's being brought into the fold, both magically and innocently.
Yeah.
Also, I just wanted to call out, I thought it was really funny that the first demonstration Verona does of magic is throwing down a smoke bomb and then letting Gillette walk out of a different bush. Just because I was like, first of all, the black rope's right fucking there, Verona. Like, and Avery uses it in a sec, but it seemed like such a hilariously mild demonstration of magic. I thought it was so funny.
Yeah.
Like she just swapped places with her twin. It was like fucking a stage magician can do that.
Yeah, it's a stage magic trick that she used to prove magic is real. It's pretty funny stuff.
Do you think in the other verse there are like stage magicians who do real magic, but their thing is when they do the real magic, they have to they have to seed the ideas for how innocence can
Yes.
explain it.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think there would be a great practice for that, like doing magic, but there has to be an explainable way for it to
Yeah.
be done. Yeah.
Somehow milking power out of the audience by tricking them. Yeah. We should also call out this moment that's kind of sad with Cameron's mum, who comes in and is just fully not like her mind is really gone right now, and it take like because this was like a big secret in Cameron's chapter, like nobody knew about her mum, and that was like a huge part of her problem. And it, seeing her mum at night, it takes Verona like 15 seconds to figure out what's happening and just be like, oh, you shouldn't be here for this. Let's put you inside. Like I'm fascinated to see where that goes. Where the next time we see Cameron, there's no way this doesn't come up as a thing, and that's going to be interesting as hell.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of cool people here. I like that we get a here's who's here, and Verona runs us through everyone that shows up. It's just nice.
Yeah, and like it's good. Like it's one of those things. I think the story's doing a good job of. Like this has turned into a somewhat substantially long story. And so it must be hard to sort of bring in really old characters or plot lines and threads. And I like the way the story's doing it with something here. Like we see like Reagan's family, and that's just like a nice little nod to a chapter of the story I'd almost forgot happened. Like there's just some there's been lots of moments like this recently where it feels like the story is just tying in some old threads, not in a way that it's critical. That's like, oh shit, I've forgotten what happened in Arc 9, like because that would be a nightmare if I needed to remember the whole story in detail. But like you get these nice little moments where it's not crucial, but it's like nice to remember that, oh yeah, that happened, and now they're getting some closure too.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It's good stuff.
I'm easily impressed. Just brought up in the chat. It's a good point. Wallace is here, and he's technically still dating Lucy. I don't think we've seen that they've formally broken up.
Yeah, I mean, Lucy hasn't mentioned him in a while, so it's not looking good.
Well, the last time she thought about him, she thought that it was pretty much over. They just hadn't really pulled the trigger on that. And so I guess, I don't know. We'll see. Well, the other thing I thought was funny here is obviously Jeremy's here. He's the one who invited Carolyn. And I just couldn't help but think, like, as this started, I was like, God, I hope for Jeremy's sake that he's not still dealing with feelings for Verona, because this wouldn't help. Like, the poor guy's going to be struggling, I think, if he finds out that, like, the cool girl he had feelings for that he couldn't be in a relationship with also is, like, a cool magic sorceress. Like, that would suck.
Yeah, that would be funny. But, Caroline knows magic exists now too, so there's nothing to say that she can't become a magician.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. But anyway, so a very fun way to end the chapter. I kind of can't imagine what is going to happen next, other than the Sylvia and Verona chat, I guess.
Yeah, but honestly, at this point, I've also learned that even if I think I know what's coming next in one of these Wildbow stories, that's probably not what's happening anyway, right? Like, this is what's so fun about this world of these stories. There's so much happening right now. There's a lot that could be about to go down.
Yeah. Can't wait to see what happens. But that's for next time.
Yeah, that's what a great little chapter. I really thought we were going to do Avery stuff next. I was really confident in my thinking that last week's 2 Lucy chapters we were setting up a first, second, third Witch of Kennet beat. But I really enjoy getting some focus on Verona here before Avery, I guess, because it feels like the next phase of the plan is going to involve a lot of networking. So I guess it makes sense that we'll do Avery stuff then.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, fair enough. Should we get into some predictions, Elliot?
Yeah, well, I think we've both
Reddit comments.
Yeah, we both pulled Reddit comments this week.
Yeah.
So I'll jump in with mine first. It was by Bavarian Barbarian in the 23.9 Reddit thread, who basically pointed out that like the girl's whole plan here right now is helping to stabilize Kennet below by basically using the aware as a part of their diagram. And they called out how this compares to Bristow using Sergeant Hall as a aware battery. And I just really liked that comparison because it really comes out in the Kennetier's favor, especially like they're doing this a lot better than Bristow did, which is a low bar. But I don't know. I just thought that was like a really fun callback that I don't link I hadn't made myself, which is like, hey, look, once again, the Kennetys are doing something somebody else did, but in a good way.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that's true. They're really learning a lot from all these ex-headmasters.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I put out a comment by to this is on Reddit, which was basically they were making a joke about the powers that be who are wanting to kind of settle in Charles, finding out that Kennet gets aware and freaking out, which I think was a pretty funny joke. But it raised an interesting question of like, if you were a big overseas lord looking to stabilize the region, would this be enough for you to double down on Charles, or would it be enough for you to potentially change your mind and try and pursue something else? Or I don't know.
Oh
Do
yeah.
you think this would? Yeah.
I don't think the Kennetys is going to make many friends doing this. Like all of the big powers that be in the world are. I mean, the seal is their system, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the Oni Wars are the other big attack on the seal that's happened, and we know how they're treated. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because it's like if Kennet wins or whatever, there's going to be eyes on them from the wider world. Like this feels like the equivalent of like a little communist country spouting up, right? And like we know how the democratic or capitalist West has treated them in the past. So I imagine there's going to be a bit of that happening.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Like
rough to
yeah.
imagine. We'll have to see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, like again, that may not even happen right away. Like I think because at the
Mm.
moment it's just going to be Kennet. It's going to be a small thing, but like if it starts to grow, I think there'll be interesting reactions from other places in the world.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what those reactions are, I guess.
Yeah, I know.
We should mention for everyone, if you want to make some predictions about what you think is going to happen now that everyone's been awared, you can do that by heading to our Pale Predictor form, which is linked in the show notes down below.
Yeah, we think once again this might sort of be the end of the story, so you're running out of chances to lock in some predictions.
Yeah, so go do it. Cool. Now, for our discussion question, we've been running one for the past fortnight that is a little different to a regular discussion question because we haven't asked any questions.
Yeah, we've been asked questions.
Mm-hmm. It's
yeah, we've done a
time
little
for a mailbag.
Yeah. And obviously those of you in the live chat, feel free to throw questions in as well, and we can try and answer those. But we got a bunch from the Reddit threads as well. So should we just start diving into those, Ruben?
Yeah. Where should we start?
Oh, I'm going to go from the top of what's in our document.
Fair enough.
Let's go from neighborhood OK 7590 was one of the first people to ask a question. They also said they've just caught up to the podcast. They've been binging it for a while.
Congrats.
Just caught up. So welcome. Hopefully you're listening to this pretty soon then. And the first question they wanted to ask us is, what is the most practitioner-y misleading truth you've ever had the satisfaction of saying?
I feel bad. I don't feel like I have many opportunities in my life to misleadingly tell the truth to lie. You know what I mean? Like if I was going to tell
a boring
a lie,
life
I would just lie. Right? Like there's no karmic penalty to me just lying in my life other than the real world. I don't know, like ones. So like,
but did you ever I mean, I definitely had the phase when we were doing Deep Impact, and I think we talked about this back there. I definitely found myself doing misleading truths rather than lies.
Oh, yeah?
As I was reading the story for a bit, and I had to kind of deprogram myself because, like, no, the story isn't saying this is a good thing. But yeah, I had a great one actually the other week. It's hard to get into the details because it's like a lot of context, but like if anybody's familiar with Infinity Train, some friends were live watching that, and they got to the end of season 1. I was asking them what they think would happen in the next season, and they said, "Oh, maybe the characters change each season." But they, instead of saying that, they phrased it in terms of like, well, maybe the voice actress was only in it for the first season, but those who know the show know that it's the same voice actress, even though it's a different character for season 2. So I got to be like, no, it's the same. Like she's still in it. So then they went into season 2 expecting the same character, but it was a different character, the same voice actor.
Well played.
And it's a very, very funny little unnecessary misleading truth I got to pull.
I've realized the time that I do this the most in my life is if I'm trying to get somebody to watch something, and I have to
Yeah.
I have to figure out what the way I'm gonna try and sell it to them is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was trying to do a rewatch of Arcane and get my partner Penny to watch, and I knew it was going to be a tough sell because it's animated and it's a video game adaptation, right? Which are two pretty big crosses against it for her
Yeah.
wanting to watch it. And so the way I decided to pitch it was by pitching that it was Haley Steinfeld in the lead, who is someone that she
Nice.
likes quite a lot from some of the other shows that she's been in. So things like that, I guess, would count as misleading truths of like trying to find the right angle to sell somebody on something.
Yeah, or I was chatting to an old mutual friend of ours, Rupert, from where we used to work, who had read Worm and most of Ward, and was wondering if he should get into Pact or Pale.
Mm.
And he was like, "How long is Pale?" And I said, "Well, it's longer than Worm."
Yeah, good way to do it.
Which I did mention, it's more than double the length of Worm. I didn't feel like that sort of specificity was needed. It was just longer than Worm.
Oh, it's not that long. Like, the author really set out to try and make a much shorter story and just leave it there.
Oh man, I don't think that'll get past the judges.
It's all true. It's all technically true.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess. Because I'm not that much of a piece of shit in real life. We found my line. Actually, sorry, I was telling you the other day. I'm very excited. Pale is quickly approaching the point. It's about to be longer than Worm and Ward combined, which is very exciting. So we'll call that out when it happens.
So this isn't really an answer to this question, but pretty related, I think, and something that I thought was quite funny. Poker Face came out recently. Have you had a chance to watch it yet, Elliot? I'm not sure if you have.
I mean, it would be lying for me to say I haven't had the chance to watch it, but I haven't watched it.
Sure. Okay. I'm not really going to spoil anything, but the kind of conceit of the show is it's like a mystery show, right?
Sure.
Except the main character can detect lies, right? Like,
okay,
it is
just like Lie to Me.
Exactly, just like Lie to Me stuff. And so that leads to this situation where sometimes when because she'll tell this to people sometimes sometimes when characters are trying to lie to her without triggering her kind of lie detector, they'll have to do this exact kind of thing of like tell a half truth that's not technically a lie so that it can get past her. And as I was watching it, it really struck me how practitionary that ends up being, which was quite fun. So if you like that vibe, check out Poker Face.
Yeah, it is one of the things I took. Like when I'm trying to sell what Pact and Pale are, the not lying tends to be one of my go-tos, because I think it's one of those things it's very easy to quickly understand how that's going to be fun as hell. Particularly, I'm always like, Pale is a murder mystery, and no one can lie, so that's going to be easy, right? Not. And it's fun. Like I just think it's my favorite individual part of the world, I think.
Yeah.
So actually, now I'm against the Kenneteers breaking the seal because that's part of it, right?
Yeah. Next question.
Sorry, Neighborhood OK7590 actually had a second question as well, which they asked for our Hazel theories. They said, you've alluded to them for too long, so hit us with your best shot.
So I don't really have any Hazel theories, so I feel like this is directed at you.
Yeah, probably. I'm going to be a dick and not answer this just because, well, first of all, I've had a bunch in the past that have been wrong, so I don't think I have a lot of standing in this in this thread. But also, we're obviously planning we're not planning. Walbo is planning a cool All Packed Up 2 segment that will deal with Hazel theories. So I'm personally kind of putting all my energy towards that rather than any more theorizing over what we've already got. But I will say I do have a theory that I think is right again. And I know what you're going to say, Ruben. We've been down that road before.
Okay.
But I'm going to put my money where my mouth is on this one. If I've got this theory, and I'm definitely coming into whatever Wildbird's prepared for us with a theory in mind, that will be affecting my choices early on in that game or whatever. But if it's not right, I'll eat 3 spoonfuls of Brilk.
Wow.
Is how I'm going to set myself up.
That's rough, Elliot. That was very rough, that Brilk.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go all in. This is because I feel like a dickhead for not answering the question, so I'll go all in and say I have a theory, and I've told a trusted member of the community this theory, so they will be able to back me up on whether it's like mostly right or not. Because I don't, just to be clear, I don't feel like I have to get 100%. I just want to be like, oh, I pretty much had it. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't think Ruben even knows what this theory is, but we will see at the end of the story, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have any theories.
Yeah, I think we're planning to do a strategy session for the All Packed Up 2 thing at some point. So that'll probably help us prepare stuff like that. But yeah, my secret theory, if it's wrong, I'll eat 3 spoonfuls of brook.
Yeah, fair enough. Very bold. Next question from Captain Rhino says, is there anything in Pale that has made you rethink the way you live your life?
That's a good question.
I don't have a good answer to this, but I do have an example. A while ago, I had the thought. Sorry, this is just such a silly thought, but I might
I'm
as
very
well share
excited
it.
for this.
Which is, a while ago, I had the thought of like, okay, something that was very interesting to me was in Worm, Taylor, well, very minor Worm spoilers, I guess, for like the very, very start of Worm, but whatever, gets powers and kind of implements a pretty good fitness regime for herself so that she can become a superhero, right? She starts implementing this is my superhero fitness regime, whatever, right? Like going jogging around the docks, whatever. And it kind of gave me the thought of, okay, if I got superpowers, would that give me the impetus to implement a strong fitness regime for myself? And so I kind of gave it a kind of a half-hearted try of like, what would I want to be a superhero fitness regime be, and trying to kind of live up to Taylor's example, which was pretty fun while I was doing it. It was quite a fun like way to trick myself into doing exercise.
I love that. But that's not Pale.
That's
Ruben.
not Pale. No,
you haven't answered the question.
Yeah, maybe there's a Kennetier's equivalent of this. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like, I think it's been hard not to talk about all the things going on with the Kennetiers for almost 3 years now, and not occasionally also like after saying it, think on something I'm doing in my life and being like, oh, like yeah, I'm doing that. Like, you know, there was a point during the pandemic where I stopped reaching out to people and stuff or whatever because I just felt like I was annoyed. I realized I was doing a bit of an Avery at one point because I had friends who were trying to contact me and I just like wasn't responding. And I was like, oh, I've gone full Avery. And I think it was like I had that realization as we were recording an episode and I was ragging on Avery for doing exactly that. And similarly, I think like Brett and Verona have been big for making me reflect on behaviors that I have. Like, I think that's a big thing. We talked about this in Pact, but like Pale and Pact have definitely made me better at empathizing. And I think Worm did that too. But like, I think Wildbow stories are really good at getting you to see and appreciate other POVs, and give them the amount of slack that they deserve. But in his recent arcs, in his recent works, it also feels like part of that has been, but not too much.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you want to do Hobo Demon's question?
Sure. So the first part of Hobo Demon's question, I guess we can talk about. Or is it even a question?
No, this is the setup for the question. So Hobo Demon talks about how like Pale and Ward have both been ending on notes that have sort of felt very culturally relevant. So like to not touch on Ward's ending very specifically because we're not doing spoilers for that, but it ended around mid 2020. And there was a communicable disease involved in the finale, which was obviously very timely in 2020. And now, obviously, Pale. There's been comparisons drawn by people to some of the stuff going on with in the Ukraine and that sort of thing, and other conflicts. So Hobo Demon then asks us if Wildbow was to do a story in 2024. How would that relate to the world of A Boy and His Dog, which takes place in 2024? So assuming A Boy and His Dog is accurate to 2024, what would Wildbow's story look like in the way that Ward and Pale mimicked their own times of ending? Have you seen A Boy and His Dog?
No.
Yeah, okay, me either.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure this wasn't one of those Elliot hasn't seen a thing everyone knows about moments.
No. It's just something that I think the Wikipedia page said it was not commercially successful, and it's a movie from a while ago. I want to say.
Well,
Yeah.
so what does 2024 look like in this world of the boy and his dog?
Well, so it's from 1975, so it's well before we were born. So I think we're all right for not having seen it. Um,
This is
okay.
the trickiest question we received. I'm much more fine with the existentially or very personal ones. This one's confusing.
How would Wildbow craft a story to include themes about a boy and his telepathic dog seeking companionship in a kind of Fallout-esque world? Well, I mean, if Wildbow goes to Twig next and does a Twig sequel, that's probably pretty close, right? Like, Twig
Oh,
could,
I don't know. Um,
well, you know, I haven't
I
really
would,
read much Twig, but Twig could probably have a telepathic dog in it.
okay, what about if this is about a boy and his telepathic dog wingman
Yeah.
looking for companionship in a weird land? Surely that's just the Avery Gets Lost on the Path sequel to Pale with Snowdrop.
Yeah, all right.
And they're looking for Jess Kasabian gets lost in the paths, and so they go find her.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, this movie is old because the lead in it is played by Don Johnson, who is, quite
No.
an old man, I think. He was in Knives Out, he was the husband of Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, okay.
So this must be a pretty old movie because Don Johnson is an old man now. How old is he? 73. Yeah, pretty old. Anyway. All right, well, let's go to the next one because I don't know what else to say about this one. So this is from Only a Sandwich. First question, what's the theme song to your show? Now, this is an easy one. What's it called, Elliot?
It doesn't have a title. I don't.
Well, you can give it a title now.
Well, I mean, the title would be Deep Impact theme song.
Boo,
I'm not a title person.
Boo.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, because I think we've talked about this before.
Created it is the answer.
Yeah, I threw it together in GarageBand because I'm basically the Mozart of my generation. Yeah, it was the Deep Impact theme song, and then we did a remix for Pale Reflections. It was originally actually composed for Ward, but that it didn't work for that, and then it ended up being great for Pact, and here we are.
Yeah. Question 2. What popular theory or analysis would you say you most disagree with at this moment? I don't know if there are any that anytime I see a popular theory, I automatically just incorporate it and assume that it's correct. I'm very susceptible.
Yeah. I feel like historically the one that always ticked me the most off was when everyone said Miss was somebody, when they're like Miss was Hazel or Miss was whatever that nice lady who helped kill the blue heron was. Do you know who am I talking about? Oh, Louisa Crowe. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Everyone kept saying Miss was people, and that one really annoyed me. I was going to be so disappointed if Miss just turned out to be some other character.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that never went anywhere.
Mm.
What do I most disagree with right now? I don't know. I'm far too out of the loop fandom wise to know for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And part 3 to Only a Sandwich's question. Are you expecting to keep covering Wildbow after this story wraps, covering something else, or just taking a break? Is The Expanse still on the table?
Good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. Do we have an answer to this question right now, Elliot?
Yeah, not really. I think we have a document from when Pale was in like Arc 4 where we wrote down what we were going to do after Pale, and then there's a note in it from like Arc 9 saying, "Oh, we'll probably just wait till the story ends because this document's a bit out of date by now."
Yeah, I think we started to talk about it again in summer break, being like, "All right, time to actually start thinking about some of this stuff." And now I think we've just given up on planning it at all until we get to that point.
Yeah, we'll definitely be taking a break. I think we're in agreement on that.
Yeah.
What we have talked about as well is I think we want to come back if Wildbow comes back to the Otherverse, but not weekly again.
Not
I don't think we have that in us again.
Yeah.
our favorite episodes to do are the reflecting ones. So we've talked about covering future Otherverse stories, just doing reflecting episodes. So bringing guests on and doing an episode at the end of every arc.
Mm.
I think would be really fun.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, is the Expanse on the table is also a very good question. We've talked about that a couple of times, and it's tough. I would love to do it, but also I don't think either of us has like 18 months of intensely following a story weekly in us for a while.
Yeah.
Like, is that fair to say, Ruben?
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, there's like I describe myself as 50%, or I'm keen, and then I really think about how long that's going to take, and right now I'm like I can't bring myself to commit to that right now.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool. Should we go into the next one?
Yeah.
From I'm easily impressed. A few questions. What has been the most enjoyable part of Pair Reflections for you? I feel like it's the same thing for me, at least. It's the same thing we talked about a lot when we were doing Deep Impact, of like doing this format makes you think about the story you're reading a lot more. You know what I mean? And it just is like, with a story like Pale, where there's so much going on, I compare my first read through of Pact to the when we did it for Deep Impact, and it was like there was so much that was like, in hindsight, probably pretty obvious, that just kind of went over my head. You know what I mean?
I remember, like, it was the same. Like the first time I listened to We've Got Worm, which obviously we owe a lot to that show for being here right now.
Yeah, I mean, they owe a lot to us. They stole our format, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Like it was one of those things where, like, reading or seeing Scott reading Worm carefully, I was just like, man, he's so right, but I totally fucking missed that. Like, I just got on board with the ride. And
wait, Taylor's meant to be unreliable?
Yeah. And like with Pact, it was interesting because I didn't get that, whereas I think I totally would have. And like, it would be interesting to sort of see what I would have missed if we just read Pale, like if I was binging it after it was already out or something. I don't know. I think the most enjoyable part of Pale Reflections to me has actually been, I'm really glad we transitioned to doing these live recordings. I think a low-key huge difference between Pale Reflections and any of our other podcasts, and Matt and Scott definitely have thoughts on this too, it's much more different than you'd expect to run a podcast on a story that's coming out than it is to do one that's already finished. Like, the difference between Deep Impact and Pale Reflections and how that sort of works is actually a lot bigger than I definitely expected. And like a big part of that is because the community is experiencing the story alongside us. And so I think like having people in the chat to call us out when we get something wrong or add ideas in is, to my mind, made the podcast a lot better.
Yeah, that's a good call. I think there's a lot of times where chat will point something out to us that we've kind of glossed over or missed, and be like, oh yeah, of course, that's a good thing to think about. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm easily impressed also asked us, if you knew Pale was going to run this long when you started, what structural changes would you have made, if any? I feel like the aforementioned, probably just doing reflecting episodes would have been an idea.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, because like if there were big structural changes to make, we might have just done them.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think it would be structural changes. That's a thing. Like, necessarily. Yeah.
As much as I love Pale, as much as I love doing this podcast, it would probably just be a conversation about whether we do it at all if we know it was going to be this long. Because I've loved it, but obviously it's been a lot of work over 3 years.
Yeah. Totally.
Hate to say that, but yeah.
It's interesting. Maybe we would have like there almost certainly would have been ways to break it up into like seasons as well, of like, we don't follow it live, but we do a few months after the fact, we start following, the first stuff up until and including the BHI, and then summer break, and maybe something like that would have been an approach.
And that would tie into what I was just talking about. With like, I've found following a live story very different to catching up, especially in terms of how the community engages with the podcast, and that certainly would have been easier to handle the transition. Like that's definitely. I honestly, I'd love to hook up with Matt and Scott again and see if we can I feel like there's actually like an interesting mini article to write about the difference between
Mm,
covering a live versus an old story, because
mm,
it it was not obvious to me how different those would be.
yeah, yeah. Um, I'm easily impressed asked three questions, and the first two, as we've talked about, have been pretty tough ones, but luckily the third one is pretty easy. I'm easily impressed asks, why is my cat trying to eat my face as I type this? And of course, the answer is because that's not a cat. That's some kind of cat adjacent monster, maybe an undead cat like the cat lady had in her house. So, yeah, be careful about that.
Yeah, just a fleshmonger cat.
Yep, could be.
My sister's cat has just started doing that thing. I we just find dead penny lizards out like at the entrance to our bedrooms or next to our desk. Like he's really proud of his new ability to catch penny lizards, and he likes to kill them and then bring them to us. It's a terrible new skill. What cat? Why are cats like this?
Mm,
That's my answer to I'm easily impressed question is why are cats like this?
there you go. Propaganda Pagoda. Best meal out you've had since lockdown?
God,
Tough question.
this question presupposes that the lockdown at all impacted how much I leave the house. Um, I don't know. I feel like my memory's too terrible to answer this question. What have you got, Ruben?
Been to a few pretty nice Indian restaurants around Sydney, which are always good. Actually, there was this. Okay, here's one. There, there was a kind of semi informal doof meetup in that was that since lockdown. I think that was since lockdown. I want to say it was about 2 years ago. In no, it would have been more than 2 years ago. Fuck, maybe it wasn't before lockdown.
I think it was in the middle of some of the lockdowns
Was it?
because I think I part of the reason I wasn't able to make it, just aside from the logistics of it being a 6 hour drive, was I don't think I was allowed to pop into Sydney at the time. But I think
Right,
like so it was when the bubble was just at like the border of the major cities.
right.
Maybe I maybe I've made that up that excuse in my head and I just wasn't invited or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, maybe that's right. Anyway, we went to this place that was near where my parents live, and it's called. I'm looking it up. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like it's like this kind of Vietnamese, I think, place, but um, with like really just a lot of really interesting things. Sorry, no, it wasn't Vietnamese. It was next to Vietnamese, but it also had like Mexicans. It was a weird vibe, but it was really nice. It was like an Asian fusion restaurant. Okay, I've looked it up on Google Maps. It's Asian fusion, and it had these really solidly nice alcoholic drinks and pretty good food and weird decor. It was just good vibes. I liked it.
Do you remember the Indian Mexican fusion restaurant near where we used to live in California?
No, no, I don't.
Oh, that place was
Sorry,
great.
I remember the Indian buffet place that we would
Yeah.
go to sometimes, but I think that's not the same one, is it?
No, no, this place was very specifically
No, yeah,
Mexican Indian fusion. So it'd be like Indian style burritos or
that's
uh,
fun.
Mexican spice curries. Yeah, it was great.
That's fun vibes.
But that was definitely pre-lockdown.
Yeah.
My answer is probably I found this burger place about a 15-minute walk from where I work. That I think is like I would compare it to that place Sheridan loves, Overloaded.
Oh yeah.
Um, like they do really excessive burgers, and in fact, they have some vegetarian ones. So I've actually jotted it down as an all packed up to thing we might be able to do,
There's a
Ruben.
place like that in Surrey Hills called Z Pickle where you can get you can get burgers that are crazy decadent, and as an example, you can substitute your bun. Instead of having a bun, you could have two grilled cheese sandwiches as your bun.
Oh, I love
So
that.
that's the kind of stuff that they do there. It's hardcore. The kind of place where you want to eat there maybe once every 2 years
Yeah,
tops.
yes, that's what I had to cut myself off from Rascals. I was going there about once a week for
No,
about
no,
five
no.
weeks, and then like I realized what it was doing to my body. Yeah, the no Rascals they do a burger of the week. They've got like a pretty standard like overloaded burgers style thing, but then they also do a burger of the week. And they had one recently, and the bun was like mini pizzas.
Oh wow,
It was great. I went and got one, and I had a nap that afternoon. I had to
that sounds
work.
fun.
I like I just had to push my work day back to end at about 10 p.m. because I slept all afternoon after eating
Mm,
it.
mm, yeah. Yeah, sounds like a fun place to go. All right, what's our next question? Oh yeah, okay. Okay, so this is from Zetithers asking, which member of the trio corresponds with which Powerpuff Girl and why? So Elliot, pop quiz. Can you name the Powerpuff Girls?
I don't know which one's which, but I'm pretty sure because my sisters were big into them. It's Bubbles.
Yeah.
I think that might be the blue one. Buttercup is one of them.
You're missing one.
Yeah.
I'll give you a clue. It
Blossom?
also starts with a B. Yes, well done, Elliot.
Yeah, no, I
Well
knew it started
played.
with B. I kept thinking Bellossom, but I think that's a Pokemon.
That is a Pokemon. Okay, yeah. So now tell me anything about their personalities.
I'm pretty sure Bubbles is the blue one with the pigtails and has big Avery vibes of just being like really like, I don't know, sort of outgoing and like ditzy.
I think that's right, given the summary that I'm looking at here.
I don't know which is which of Blossom and Buttercup. Which one's which color?
Blossom is the red one and Buttercup is the green one. So, okay, here's their summaries. Blossom is everything nice. She's red/pink. The most level-headed and composed, very strong and determined. Bubbles is yeah.
Also, I was going to say Blossom for Lucy, and then Buttercup for Verona. And that's mostly because what I remember of Buttercup, the green one, is she kind of looks like Verona. Like she's got the same haircut. She does kind of look
like Verona, yes. But her personality ingredient is spice. Her signature color is green. She loves to get dirty, fight hard, and play rough. She's described as a tough-headed tomboy. So
I mean, that doesn't
I don't think they map very well. I would say.
That doesn't sound super Verona-y, like out on the surface level, but I think about like really like how that fits in the group or whatever. I feel like that's Verona-y.
Hey, so Blossom's powers include ice breath, lightning bolts, advanced intelligence, and microscopic vision, which I guess just means she can see things that are really small. That's not a power that you hear about much.
Well, did you ever watch Alphas? I know I talk about Alphas.
You talk about Alphas so much. And I watched maybe the first episode or two and decided it wasn't very good.
That's one of the that's a power one of the people has in Alphas. So she can make all of her senses like way more sensitive. So yeah, she can like she's like a walking she's like the team's CSI kit because she can, you know, smell real good if she wants, or she can look real good. So she looks at like microscopic evidence and shit. Yeah. That's a show I'm terrified. I'm never going to rewatch Alphas because there's no way it's as good as I remember it being.
Yeah. In the original pilot for Powerpuff Girls, the accidental substance introduced into their mixture was a can of whoop-ass, which was eventually replaced by Chemical X in the aired version, which I think is very funny.
I'm still mad we didn't get the live action
Powerpuff Girls with what's-her-face? Yeah.
Chloe Bennett was going to be in it, yeah.
Did we not get that? Did that get
the bit of the script leaked, and it was
that's right.
awful.
Oh, that's right. It was atrocious.
Yeah, it was really bad. Man. And so then they like went back to the drawing board, and then I think two of the stars, including Chloe Bennett, like pulled out, and then I think it just died. Especially because CW is basically dead at this point.
Chloe Bennett, Dove Cameron, and Yana Peralt. So 2/3 of an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reunion.
So I think it's dead in the water with CW dying and also having to go back to square one because it was so poorly written.
Anyway, did we answer that question? Kind of.
I think so.
Perfect. All right, Beleg Tal asks. Oh yeah.
Oh sorry. Yeah, I'll do one. They're looking for book recommendations because they think book recommendations from Wildbow fans are apparently good. So, what other books or stories have we been obsessed with lately, or would otherwise like to recommend?
What do you got, Elliot?
I recently read the Broken Earth trilogy that starts with the 5th season, and I got pretty obsessed with that. Also, weirdly, the second one of the trilogy was probably my favorite, which that never happens. Like, usually the second is not the pinnacle of the trilogy, but I feel like in this case it was. Yeah, really good world. And really interesting. It really examines like parent-child relationships in a very fun way, and like kind of the baggage of what your parents do to you and stuff.
Yeah.
So I definitely recommend that. I recently read 1984 as well. I don't know that I recommend that all that much.
Fair enough. Do I have any good recommendations? No book recommendations that I'd recommend to Wabo or Otherverse fans, but I've been playing this game Dredge that just came out. That's a atmospheric horror fishing game. That's really fun vibes. So maybe Otherverse fans would enjoy that.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun. I quite like it.
It's been a few. Like 2023 has been a good year for games so far.
I think every year is a better and better year for games, and I think that will continue to happen.
True. I also wanted to call out. Fuck, what's it called? This is not a good start to a recommendation. But in my defense, it's a weird name. It's another urban fantasy web serial that I started and only put down just because Pale's kind of eating up all of my appetite for urban fantasy web serials. But God, yes, thank you. I'm easily impressed. Catalepsis.
Give us the single sentence pitch.
Oh, God, I didn't make it very far in, so this may not really be that reflective. But it was like this girl, and she thinks she's insane because she's seeing magical shit basically, and then it turns out that it's not. She kind of had access to like seeing the beyond the boundaries of reality sort of stuff, and then it was only just getting started. There was like a twin sister involved, which was a fun thing that reminded me of Pact as far as I got into it. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't really get very far, but it reminded me a lot of Pact at the start.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. What else is on our list? We've got what's the biggest thing you did to improve the quality of your podcast and make it as good as it is today? Do you have any interesting behind the scenes stories that we wouldn't know about and you think are worth sharing?
Again, presupposing quality of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
What of assumptions being made in all these questions? I think the biggest thing that we ever did was it was too far into Pale, but remember we had that like operation not have to do a whole listen through of our episodes to edit them.
Mm-hmm.
I reckon that was around arc 10 or so.
Yep.
And there's probably problems with that, like there's stuff that would be caught that isn't, but just for quality of life, it was killing us to have to go through the whole episode to edit it. So sort of like, I think we got it to the point where it's maybe like a 10% drop in episode quality or something, but saving us 2 to 3 hours a week. And I don't think we'd still be here if we hadn't figured out how to make that happen. I don't know. What are interesting behind the scenes stories? I don't know. Do you have any of those, Ruben?
Yeah, not really, right? Like,
I feel like if anything, I'm too willing to talk about everything that's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I don't really have. I feel like there aren't really any interesting behind the scenes stories that are behind the scenes. Yeah, I don't know.
If they are, it's probably all packed up to prep stuff. That feels like when I think about something we don't talk about publicly, it's all packed up to
stuff. Yeah,
which we're not going to talk about here.
Yep. We'll never announce any of it, and anytime you think we have announced some of it, we've been lying.
No, I've seen. I'm just going to say it. Nobody has seemingly picked up on what I thought was the funniest joke in our April Fool's episode.
Wait, we did an April Fool's episode?
Yeah, spoilers. That was an April Fool's.
What?
But yeah, I've seen nobody mention what I think is the funniest part of it.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, third question from Beleg Tal. Have you started Twig yet? And if not, why not? Well, I've started Twig, so I don't need to answer any more of that question.
Yeah, I mean, technically, I read Arc 1 3 years ago for that episode we did on Arc 1. So
boom, boom.
Yeah, no, and I honestly, that was 3 years ago. I'm gonna need to start Twig again.
Yeah.
But Twig is on my after Pale list of things that over the last 3 years has grown somewhat.
I was reading Twig right before Pale started, which is when I was about halfway through it when Pale started, and we started doing this, and then I was like, I don't have time to read this right now.
It's also just because it's another Wildbow thing, and the stupid part of me that forgets how much effort things take, still thinks maybe I want to live read it. Which is another part of why I'm like, oh well, I'll do that once Pale's over. So yeah, like Belly Tile's obviously one of the hosts of Twigging on the Twig, which I assume is why they're asking this. And so my plan is the second Pale's over, I'm going to start reading Twig and catching up on that podcast because I'm excited to be somebody who gets to listen
Hell yeah.
to smart people explain the story.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can read. It's fine to read 2 web serials. That's all right. It's the reading a web serial and doing the episode on it. That's the time-consuming thing. Because reading it as just a reader is very different to reading it and then being like, okay, what am I going to talk about in this?
Yeah. Also, the last thing I need right now is that experience of listening to a smart person explain a story I'm reading as I go, because that's going to make me feel worse about what I'm doing on ours.
Yeah. So yeah.
That's all the
questions. Were there any live questions? Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions from the chat before we wrap up? I think somebody had one before. Oh, there's too much. There's too many memes for me to scroll past to find the old question. I should have pinned it or something.
It's too far back, so it's been lost to time. But I think at the time it was posted, we did say, save this for later and we'll get to it at the end of the thing.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, that's right. It was Giles Zal who asked what our Pale tattoo ideas are.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I mean, again, these assumptions, we may not, we've set the goal for what that's going to be, but we may not raise enough money to get tattoos. But I do it.
Or if we raise enough money, the community gets to decide what Elliot gets as a tattoo.
I do. I haven't talked to you about this, but I'm genuinely, and I know this was a joke where we talked about it all packed up one, but I'm willing to put in another donation goal that is double the current tattoo one. That I will promise it's a goblin tattoo if we reach that one.
Wow, you're hardcore.
I mean,
fuck your goat. Oh, that's really good. Oh, that's very funny. Yeah, what would the goal have to be for you to get "fuck your goat" tattooed, Elliot?
What is that a reference to?
It's what Mal tattooed on the practitioner. It was going to be "fuck your."
Oh, goddess. Fuck yeah, okay, yeah, fuck your goddess, yeah.
Yeah.
On my face or just anywhere?
I mean, what's the price for each? I guess
face would have to be
a facial tattoo that says "fuck your goat." And every single person you meet for the rest of your life, Elliot will say, "Huh?
Yeah,
what does that mean?"
And what's to explain?
Well, I was doing a podcast.
What's what's just hitting me with that as well is like I get none of the money out of this. Like it's all going to charity, right? So I can say $20 million, but in my head I was going, yeah, but with $20 million, I'd never have to work a day in my life. Yeah, but yes, I would because money. It's going to the charity. So it would have to be enough money that the charity can
give you
fix politics. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Then I can.
It would have to be $1 billion to a universal basic income charity, so you never have to work again or something.
Exactly. Like, yeah. Or we have to change what the charity is to a charity where I will now meet the criteria to get money from them.
What, the charity that helps people get tattoos they regret lasered off their faces?
Yeah, exactly. For fuck your goad anywhere on my body would still be probably high 6 to 7 digits.
Yeah. Fuck your goad, man. That's good. I would love
whereas,
to
like,
see that.
The biscuit emote, like I would get that tattooed on me for not significantly more than what our existing tattooed goal is. I think.
Yeah, all right.
I have a more intricate idea that's like a pale theme thing. I want to get one with colors this time. So I still haven't shown anyone what my all packed up tattoo is, but I wanted to get one around it with like purple, red, and orange eyes, masks, or something. I don't know. That's where I'm thinking for pale. But I'd be willing to get the biscuit emote too. I think she's just so fucking adorable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Well, I think that's all the questions, is it?
Yeah, I mean, did you say what your pale tattoo idea is?
I can't remember mine. It's been too long since I've thought about it. So
yeah, that's fair.
Did I have one? Probably at some point. It will probably be something Lucy related because she is, after all, the best. Let's just, as to not break anything from the sword moot, let's just say she's the best in her field. But yeah, I don't know.
Oh, here we go. We do have another question. Hypothetically speaking, if the BHI started up again at the end of Pale, who do you think should be the headmaster?
Toad Swallow.
Yeah, it's hard not to have that as your first thought, right?
He's just the best. With somebody like Louise in there as well as I don't think Louise specifically, but somebody as a kind of innocent / aware I don't know, representative.
Yeah, I mean, now that the Musses are out of the equation, the Crows should hopefully be in talks again. That's like, and I think that's again a good middle ground of helping the BHI reestablish itself as that kind of institutional place, but with deep ties to Kennet, so that it's not snobby and exclusionary. Also throwing it out there, I think Anthem, like reformed Anthem, would actually make a pretty good BHI headmaster, or at least a teacher.
Yeah, Anthem is a good thought.
But I don't know. Like it depends. It depends whether Jasmine's willing to move out there, I guess.
True. Should we get to our next week's discussion question?
Yeah. Somewhat timely, I'd say. We're asking everyone what you think about weakening the concept of innocence. Obviously, yeah, the Kenneteers have just launched their attack on the seal, and I'm curious to know what people think of it.
Yeah, I think it's there's kind of a sub question of like, yeah, what do you think the ramifications of this will be for Kennet, right?
Yeah,
but yeah, I think. What do you think about weakening the concept of innocence in general? Are you pro or against? What do you think?
Yeah, because I think, yeah, I don't like, just to answer for myself. I think it's generally positive, but like, like it's not gonna. It's ripping off a hell of a band-aid, right? Like, yeah.
So you can leave your answers to that in the discussion thread, which is linked in the show notes down below.
Yes, don't forget to check us out on Twitter as well. We post updates there.
Yeah, updates and a meme every single day. You can also check out duffmedia.com, where you can find all the information on all the other shows on the Duff Media Network. Go check them out; they're great.
Yeah, and as well, there are podcasts that are outside of Doof, and usually I don't recommend bothering with any of them. But a quick shout out, obviously, to Twigging onto Twig, which we just talked about. I hear it's very good, and I'm very excited to finally take that plunge when Pale ends. But like, everybody else should go do it right now, because following along live with those sorts of shows is the best part.
Yeah. If you want to support the Duff Media Network, you can become a patron at patreon.com/duffmedia. It's a great place to be. You get access to all kinds of pieces of bonus content and great perks. So check it out.
Yep. And don't forget to stop by Wildbow's Patreon, patreon.com/Wildbow. He's writing this story. He's sharing his awareness of the story with the rest of us piece by piece, just like the Kenneteers are. Yeah, and so much like the Kenneteers are about to do, I think, he needs you to give him the money.
Yep. So go do that and have fun.
See ya.